Ma'am, you're live now.
All right. So, good evening. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to yet another session of SIPCHAT. When we look at the time that we have come up as a profession, or the lives of physiotherapists have changed over a period of time, there have been quite a few milestones, moments, and phases in time, which are significant with respect to our growth and expansion. One of those phases was the years between the late 1980s and the early 1990s, where you could say in a way that we came of age and the young Indian physiotherapists started exploring the world and making their mark on the field. Now, we have with us today a very eminent physiotherapist who started his professional life around that time and has established himself as a very successful professional. So please welcome Dr. Anil Bhave, and thank you very much, sir, for joining us today. Uh, Sir's formal introduction is that he is the clinical director of Orthopedic Rehabilitation and Wasserman Gait Laboratory and chief of strategy for rehab engineering and virtual rehab at Sinai Rehabilitation, Rubin Institute of Orthopedics at the Sinai Hospital. He is also a practicing physical therapist for 40 years. An accomplished researcher and lecturer, Dr. Bhave has published significant works, up to 100 in peer-reviewed journals, and delivered more than 330 lectures nationally and internationally. He is a recipient of quite a few prestigious awards, such as the Jacqueline Perry Award for the American Academy of Orthopedic Surgeons and the Lynn Staheli Award for the Pediatric Orthopedic Society of North America. Now, this was the formal introduction. Now, an informal introduction of Dr. Bhave by one of his friends was that he is a very, very intelligent, enterprising, and analytical individual, a one who has always, an upbeat mood. He's fun to hang around with. And this is what he is as a person and as a colleague. So, welcome, sir. And we would start out by asking you to share with us some of your early memories as to how did you enter this field of physical therapy, and when you look back at those days, what are your thoughts, what are your memories about that?
Well, it's a very interesting story. Uh, I graduated from Jain College. At that time, this was inter-science and not 12th grade.
Okay.
And at that time, state of Maharashtra had 230 seats for medicine.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I fell short by 3 marks, which
Okay.
is at that time was 0.5%. So nothing against JJ College, JJ Institute or JJ Medical College,
Medical college.
but that was the last one to get in.
Okay.
And I was number 4 on the waiting list, but I never made it, unfortunately.
Okay.
So then one of my cousins who was working at that time in KEM hospital as a surgeon said to me, go check it out. Physiotherapy is an upcoming field. It's good field. And then I actually went to KEM hospital. I didn't meet anybody of the faculty there, but I just observed when I went around with him. And I was intrigued uh, initially. Uh, there was a lot of pressure from my home to become a dentist because I also had made enough to make it to dentistry as physical therapy, also pharmacy. And I don't know, I had this dream. I was a cricket player. I was very involved and I was supposed to be really good. I thought I was really good. And I had this dream that maybe this is a 2-year course and I can then pursue my dreams in playing cricket afterwards. And I used to play, I used to go to practice at Shivaji Park with Atrekar sir. So when I was very involved with cricket at that time. And then that's my initial journey into PT school. It was very difficult for me initially because we were a batch of 40
Okay.
that entered, and there were 9 boys and 31 girls, or
Okay.
something like that, or 11 boys, 11 boys. And within first 3 months, everybody dropped out except 2 of us. So in the end, we were just 2 boys
Okay.
and 30 odd girls. It was very
Okay.
daunting for us. Uh, he's my friend. He was I still keep in touch with him. His last name is Save, so they used to call us a pair of Bhave and Save in our classes.
Okay.
And it was not it was challenging. I was you're very mature when you go to PT school at that time. I graduated my high school at 15,
Okay.
17 I was in PT school.
Okay.
So it's not, you're not really you don't know much about what it is and how to function.
Mhm.
Uh, the other disadvantage I had was I came from a vernacular medium,
Okay.
and they used to call us vernacks.
Yes.
That was the terminology
That was the
used. I
thing.
came from a
Yes.
vernacular medium, and it is not always easy to transfer everything into English, and it was a little difficult for me, challenging. When I did my first year on inter-science, it was a lot of science courses. It was easier. But when you start writing things, essay type questions, it's not easy.
Mhm.
But then there were a lot of great things at KEM. There were a lot of good teachers. I mean,
Mhm.
everybody knows about Professor Shahani. He was a visionary. To me, the most impactful was Ms. Dastur and Ms. Kapadia.
Okay.
Many people don't know who Ms. Kapadia is probably at this time because she's not very involved with physiotherapy, but she was a perfectionist. She
Mhm.
believed in techniques and simplicity, and doing it correctly was her motto. And she was very particular about that. And she would yell at you if you didn't do it right. And that made a big impact on me, and so did Ms. Dastur at that time. And I kept in touch with Ms. Dastur throughout until today. I keep in touch with her.
Mhm.
And so that was my early years at KEM. The other thing was there were a lot of great orthopedic surgeon teachers that we had.
Mhm.
I still
Okay.
remember oh my God, Dr. Vora, Dr. Bansali,
Mhm.
Dr. Oh my God, the third name I'm forgetting, and it'll come to Bowdecker,
Okay.
Dr. Bowdecker, uh, and then Dr. Dheer came on, and they were great teachers. They really taught even PT students with same interest that they would teach their orthopedic residents. And it was great to learn from them and see what it was all about. There
Yes.
were times when it was frustrating and disappointing. I won't lie to you about. There
Okay.
were times when it was difficult as a very young therapist to really see what the future holds for you. And I mean, I have to admit, I was not an A student. I was a solid B student, maybe a B
Okay.
plus many times, but I was not, because I was so distracted by other things I wanted to do in life and not much direction at that time, very young age.
True.
I think there should be some education to our students about maturity, financial maturity, economics.
Absolutely.
We don't have that at that time. We didn't
Absolutely.
have any of that. We didn't know.
Absolutely.
But that's my early story in KEM Hospital.
Okay, that's fascinating to hear, sir. And I'm sure KEM, we all have a special place in our hearts for KEM. So a lot many things can be said about KEM, its teachers, its the other colleagues that are there. Uh, so you passed out somewhere in 1981, 82, I believe.
No, no, no. I passed out my BSc physiotherapy in 77,
Okay,
78,
okay. And your master's in 81,
82.
82. All right.
Yeah, it was a hybrid program. It went on longer than it should have been. It started
Right,
late because it was the first batch of
right,
masters.
right,
So
right.
it went on late. Our dissertations got passed late and all that. But yes,
Okay, okay,
but that's in between. I worked many jobs.
okay. Tell us
Between
about that, sir.
In between, I did a hospital, a JJ hospital for a short period of time.
Okay.
I worked at COH, Children's Orthopedic
Yes.
Hospital.
Yes.
And that's when I met the people from Hajiali.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I went to their 3-month course called PGCR.
Yes.
I had to wait for the first batch of MSc to start.
Okay.
In between, I also worked at MGH Hospital,
Mm-hmm.
Mahatma Gandhi Hospital for workers for compensation, work compensation type. So I moved around, and I'll tell you a great experience about one of those uh, things at Children's Orthopedic Hospital. I don't know how many of you know this, but at that time in 79, 80, they used to have three, I think, or two blind therapists.
Okay.
They were blind, totally blind.
Okay.
They had learned everything, all the technique. They only treated polio children between age 0 and 1,
Mm-hmm.
and their handling of the kids. I cannot even forget even today how beautifully they handled the tissue,
Mm-hmm.
and they handled the patient under age 1, maybe 2. I don't remember exactly what the age cutoff for them was.
Mm-hmm.
And then we treated the older patients, the ones that
Okay.
could walk and talk.
Okay.
But it was fascinating to see the techniques they used for pacifying the kids, the handling of the tissue. They did all the effective stretches that were needed for the kids with polio.
Mm-hmm.
And that was fascinating for me. And I still remember that because I truly believe that there are only two things in physical therapy that have the evidence. I have said this in my lectures all the time,
Mm-hmm.
and that's manual therapy and NMES.
Okay.
Those are the only two things that have abundance of randomized controlled double blind, not double blind, but
Thanks.
randomized controlled trials.
True.
And their handling of the tissue was just superb. And I've never forgotten that.
This actually has been quite a, contentious issue here. Over the period of time, people have come up with things that, this may be unethical towards the patients. And as the patients become a little more aware of their rights, there have been a lot of debates about whether should this be allowed, should blind physiotherapists be allowed, and, should they be allowed to practice. So I'm sure this is
I don't think they
very
were called
positive.
I don't think they were called physiotherapists.
Okay.
They were massage therapists.
Okay. Okay.
And I don't think they got the same salary as we got, I think. I'm not
Mhm.
sure. I could be
Okay.
wrong.
Okay.
I could be wrong. But the doctors loved them.
Hmm.
I loved them. They were so nice people.
Okay.
And they used to tell me so many tips about tendo Achilles and about IT band and
Hmm.
things that, they felt. They never saw it.
Okay. Exactly.
They never saw it. They just felt it.
True.
And I don't know the politics of this. I just want to tell you share my experience that it was very interesting, and I learned a lot from how they handle kids. And
Right.
I even tell my therapist today in my hospital when we treat our limb lengthening children, the young
Hmm.
children,
Hmm.
I said physical therapy is sometimes like milking a cow. You have to be gentle and you have to slowly work the tissue. And that's something that I learned a long time ago with those therapists. Uh, just an interesting tidbit. There are lots of other things that I learned, but that was a very uh, a different experience. And when I first went, I was a little offended that I went to school.
Hmm.
I did the PT course.
And they
I'm
are
doing
better.
PCR soon. And these guys are sitting there. They don't have the
True.
sensation that I have. They
True.
can't examine a patient like I do,
True.
but they're doing this. And they were sitting next to us and they had the same privilege. So it was challenging, but then looking back, it was great. It was amazing.
So you mentioned a couple of minutes back that it was a hybrid course that you underwent through your masters, especially. Uh, Of late, things have been, quite formalized a bit, and we have, segregation of subjects and items point by point as to what needs to be covered, what doesn't need to be covered, and what is to be expected out of a student. Even examiners have pointers in terms of what are the questions that you can ask, what are the questions that you can't ask. So, coming from an era where things were not so formal versus today where things are really formalized into compartments, what do you think makes a better therapist, or how do you learn better in an unstructured environment or a structured environment?
Well, we had the advantage of having teachers who knew their boundaries very well.
Mhm.
We had teachers who actually were very forward thinking in terms of, like, my guide was Dr. Mokashi from Hajiali. I had a colleague with me, his name is Shekhar Vaidya. His guide was Chainani sir.
Mhm.
And then we had batchmates from KEM and Savita. I don't know if you know Savita
Of course, yes.
and Kameshwari.
Mm.
Their guides were Dastur and Professor Shahani. So those were very forward-thinking people. They were the ones who set the first transcript of our MSc course. I can share that with you. It's very well written out, very thought out. I have it somewhere.
Okay.
And it was very well thought out by Mr. Mokashi as to what a MSc from Rehab or Hajiali should be knowing.
Exactly.
And also it was, I'm sure Savita can share with you the transcript if she has it from KM. They had thought it out well from their perspective as to what type of patients do you have. Like, I don't think they had so much emphasis on prosthetics and orthotics like we had.
Mhm.
They didn't have so much emphasis on biomechanics as we had. So, but their EMG has a very strong component of it, which was their forte. So there was acute orthopedics was their forte. Ours was at Hajiali was not. So every hospital, I think one of the recommendations I make at even University of Maryland
Mhm.
is that you should see what your protoplasm is. What can you offer the student the best? Because master's is a specialization, and not everybody should specialize in everything.
True.
Like, why should every school offer every specialty?
True.
Why? Because you make money, but you can increase the seats for your specialty.
True.
If you are a primary orthopedic center and that's all you see, then maybe you want to increase your number of seats for orthopedics and not have any cardiopulmonary if you don't have that specialty, because then you have to send the students out. And the clinical mentoring was not just by Mokashi and by Chainani sir. They had their other jobs, but they had groomed number of people around them that had very sound clinical backgrounds and direct clinical influences on how we function. And I know we used to not like it at that time. We were young and naive. But now to think of it back now, and I don't know if you know all these people, but there was
Of
a
course, I do.
therapist named Joyce Pinto. She was at Hajiali. She taught me everything I know about EMG initially. She taught me all EMG. Mokashi sir never taught me EMG.
Mhm.
So was Suniti Chatterjee. Her maiden name was Chatterjee, I think. Suniti madam. And she was very good with PNF. She
Mhm.
taught, she was involved with it. So they had created and there are many other, I don't remember everybody's name, but there are many people who were influential in actually imparting. And the other thing was we never had just classes. We always had patient every day. Every day we had patient experiences, and not always we were treating patients. Sometimes we were observing. Uh, the whole EMG thing. 3 months I did no needling until I got good at it, and they made sure I was good at it before I did it on my own. So the institutions have to decide what their best core competencies are
Mhm.
to offer courses. I always say this: Anybody can offer courses. What makes a good clinician is people who run the courses, who know the subject well, and actually can influence a mind on how to make a patient better. That's how I feel. Maybe it is difficult to do it in the academic situation that you are today, but I think that should be the goal of all the teachers, in my opinion, as to find your core competency of your institution and focus on that, because then you will have students who don't have to go other places to learn. They can be
So,
at your institution if they're good. So it's a thought, and I'm sure there are opposing thoughts to this, but that's just my personal opinion.
okay. Sir, let's talk about the time that, you passed out your master's, and that was probably the time where uh, opportunities were coming up around in the world. People were exploring other avenues of going abroad and looking for jobs over there. So tell us about how you went through that whole process and how you decided to work in the US and settle in the US. So can we have a bit of that?
It didn't start very easily.
Okay.
It was series of failures,
Okay.
multiple failures actually.
Okay.
It started with trying to go to Dubai.
Okay.
There's a therapist, a very good close friend of mine. He's still my friend, and we still talk to each other. His name is Matthews.
Okay.
He and I tried to go to Dubai.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, at that time, the system was incredibly corrupt. And it was we never understood what corruption was until we interviewed at the embassy.
Okay.
And it was not the local, the government, it was a government job. It was not the local government, it was not, money was never asked from them.
Mm.
But it was the middlemen that were surrounded and that controlled the entry into the embassy. And
Okay.
we never understood it,
Okay.
to tell you the truth. Again, being naive, I didn't get it. And it just went really bad. We spent a lot of money on getting our passports urgently, this and that, got ready, everything. They said, yeah, the letter is coming, letter is coming. The letter never came. That's how my first experience was trying to go to Dubai. Then I tried again to go to Saudi Arabia. That time there was a KEM, Kuwait. That time
Mm-hmm.
my friends Savita and Ravi both had tried to go to Kuwait, and I didn't really pursue that very hard. So it's my fault that I didn't really pursue as hard as they did, and they went and I didn't. Then I tried to go to Canada. I didn't try really Canada. I looked into it on Australia. And it didn't work out either. Somehow it didn't happen. I tried. I tried everywhere. I did wanted to go and learn again, and the time was running out for me. I was getting older, and I wanted to finish my goal was to finish my education before age 30.
Mm.
It did happen like that.
Okay.
So there were a series of failures, and finally, I got not one but two jobs, two job offers. I first got an offer for work study program at NYU through one of my close friends, Sita Lakshmi. She had moved to America a few years ago before, in 82 or 83,
Mm-hmm.
and she sent me the thing. And then I got a job offer in Boston.
Okay.
And then at the same time, she was working at Hospital for Joint Diseases, and she said, why don't you just come here? And that took about a year and a half.
Okay.
So from 82 to late 87, 88, I kind of struggled for finding my footing. I played a lot of cricket during that time.
Okay.
And played a lot of cricket during that time. I actually remember seeing Sachin Tendulkar when he was 9 years old in
Okay.
Achrekar sir's net. Yeah, I remember that,
Uh-huh.
seeing him there.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, Achrekar sir said, he's going to be a greatest player. And I just said, okay. And I walked away, but it turned out to be absolutely right. He knew what he was talking about.
Okay.
So I worked at Ramakrishna Mission Hospital from 83, I think, to 87 or 88, I forget now. I worked there part-time from morning 8 to 1 o'clock. And then I did some home visits, around that area. And then in the evening, I used to run a practice, private practice.
Okay.
Which I had learned how to do from, I did locums for a few private practices, and that's how I learned. And the impression that I had was, there was a guy named Pradeep Shah from Malad. I used to manage his clinic many times when he would go on vacation. Great guy, great friend. I remember him very well. And then I did my own, and it was difficult. It was very challenging. Doing the private practice successfully was very difficult in India at that time. People expected all kinds of favors from you to send patients to you.
True.
Especially the general practitioners. They expected money, direct money from you, 20%, 30%.
Yes.
Yeah. I couldn't deal with it. It was very difficult for me. The surgeons never asked money directly ever. The GPs were very shameless in asking money. And it was difficult for me. And even if the surgeons had sent the patients, you had to satisfy the GP and not the surgeon.
Okay.
Because the surgeon was getting a patient from the GP too. So the control over the patient and its reward was always there. Some people made a lot of money in India, or maybe all over the world, having this type of practice. I don't know if it still goes on. I have no idea. But it was not easy. It was difficult for me to sustain that. And that's when I started getting a little kind of frustrated. And I said, you know what, I got to really explore this whole area of going abroad again. And I tell you a funny story about my visa. I got my H1 letter from New York. And I didn't know what H1 visa really was, to tell you the truth. At that time, nobody knew, this is, people were not coming on H1 visas. Mostly the people who I knew had come, they came to the JFK, New York, and they got their green card right there on the airport. That's how it was. So coming on H1 was unusual. So I went to get my H1 visa. And at that time I was married, so my wife was with me. And we just went inside the embassy to check, because I had received a H1 visa, a copy of H1 visa, and a letter from the hospital for job appointment. So I go there and I present it. And he says, do you have any documents? I said, I have my birth certificate and my graduation certificate. They showed it to him. So the guy, this is an American guy, white guy. He opens, he said, where is your passport? So I give my passport, my wife's passport, and he says, welcome to America. He stamps my passport, my H1 is done. And then he says, go pay the fees. Well, at that time, the fee was 1,600 rupees for two of them. And I didn't have 1,600 rupees. So I still remember this lady's name, Mrs. Vaidya.
Okay.
I remember her name even today. And I went to her, and I hope people who understand Marathi will understand this better. So I went and I told her that he had stamped our passport and we have to pay the fees to get the final visa approval and everything. But I don't have the money. I'll go and get it. And she's like, in Marathi, she says, "Kai ho bhave, इथे लोक महालक्ष्मीला नमस्कार करून इकडे येतात व्हिसा घ्यायला, तुम्हाला व्हिसा द्या, तुमच्याकडे पैसे नाही, काय तुम्ही." Luckily, my father-in-law worked nearby, so we went. He was working in State Bank, so we went and borrowed the money, came back, paid it, and then we got our visa. That's a true story.
That's nice. That's nice. So tell us a bit about your initial professional years in the US. What were the challenges? What were the benefits?
The They put me to work right away as
Okay.
soon as I landed within 3 days.
Mhm.
And that was very challenging for me initially. I was not a PT, they called them restricted license. So I was
Okay.
eligible for licensing, but I did not have a license to
Right.
practice. So I had to be, all my notes had to be signed by a clinical clinician who was
Mhm.
licensed,
Mhm.
just like a PT assistant today is. All my notes had to be reviewed, signed, and all my treatments were reviewed by him.
Mhm.
So that went on for about 5 months. And then I had a major setback. In New York at that time, we had exam, which was licensing exam, was both a practical and theory.
Right.
So theory was easy. I passed it, no problem. Practical was one examiner acts as a patient, one examiner uh, is a supervisor. He's actually grading you
Judging you. Yeah.
and judging you. And one examiner is a patient because they don't give you live patients, unlike we do other places. And the guy who was telling me had a very thick Brooklyn accent.
Accent.
And I didn't understand a word he was
Sorry.
saying. And I failed that exam.
Okay.
I was distraught because if I failed again, I had to go back to India.
True.
And I completely, I was so, I didn't tell anybody, but I was scared. My friends know. I have some close friends in New York. They know that. But I was
Mhm.
scared. And I came and told them. So then I bought TV
Mhm.
and I started watching American
Watching
programs.
sitcoms. Okay.
That's when we bought a TV after
Okay.
4 5 years, just to watch, just to get an accent. Because now I can tell you an accent from Boston, Brooklyn, Queens,
Mm.
but at that time I couldn't. And it
True.
was very difficult, very thick accent. Some of them had very thick accent and you couldn't tell. Luckily, the second time I had a Chinese lady who had worse accent than me, so I was no problem. But the first one was hard. The
Okay.
work environment was challenging.
Mhm.
I was thrown from Ramakrishna Mission was not a big hospital. It was a nice
True.
hospital. Divya Kapadia, who runs that place, great lady, great
Mm.
therapist.
Mm.
But from there, I went to Hospital for Joint Diseases, which was
Okay.
very regimented at that time.
Mm.
You won't believe we used to do 75 hip and knee replacements every
Oh,
day.
wow.
We had 41 operating rooms, basement one, basement two,
Wow.
21 each, 20 and 21. It was 350 bed orthopedic institute. It was so buzzing. It was so
Mm.
fast paced
Mm.
that you can't imagine
True.
from a pace in that to pace in United States
Mm. Mm.
was very challenging.
Mm.
And therapy profession wasn't what it is today. It was
Mm.
challenging for even the local therapist, even the
Mm.
American therapist, to survive in that hierarchy of
Mm.
attending doctors and
Mm.
residents and the whole thing.
Mm.
Uh, I can tell you one experience. I've shared this with other people, and I'll share here. So first year of my work there, we used to go on grand rounds. The grand
Mhm.
rounds are where like we have in KEM,
Yes.
everybody.
Yes. Everybody's.
At KEM, people used to ask questions and
Yes.
attendants will answer. So we had one guy, I will not name the guy, he's dead now, it doesn't matter. He became a friend later on. But we were walking and he's the head of that unit. He's walking ahead, then behind him are his fellows, then residents, then nurses, then medical students, and then last batch is therapists. So I was
Yeah.
the last to walk. So then we stopped at one patient bed and I asked a question, some
Mm.
question about CPM, because they were using CPM on everybody almost at that time with total knee patients. I asked a question. And I didn't know that he was very passionate about his protocols. I had no idea. I just asked an innocent question. So the guy didn't look at me. They looked at the chief nurse. Her name was Susan. And he told Susan, tell this young guy, I don't talk to physiotherapists.
Oh,
That's my experience.
wow. Okay.
Later on, I worked very closely with a lot of orthopedic surgeons, a lot of them, many of them are my friends.
Mm.
But that was the original reaction. It made me really feel very small at that point,
True.
very small. But it was a great experience in terms of learning. The
Mm.
first non-cemented hip was done there.
Mm.
The first hinged brace was developed and made there and used.
Mm.
Few of the ACL reconstruction surgeries when nobody else was doing in the country, we were doing 20, 30 a week,
Okay.
ACL rehab. You know, we used to
Okay.
cast every ACL reconstruction
Mm.
in a long leg cast for 3 weeks in
Oh,
flexion.
okay.
Then you take them out and you stretch them,
Mm.
get full extension. Imagine that, poor athletes. So when the brace first came, the one of the first biodexes came there.
Okay.
So we had a very busy therapy place. We had about 45 PTs or 35 PTs,
Mm-hmm.
10 OTs, few assistants, big
Mm.
department. And I got a very good experience because I rotated through acute care, inpatient, step down unit, outpatient in the evening. So I got a very good experience in those 4 or 5 years that I stayed there. It was great.
Okay. So I guess that's where you found your love for orthopedics and everything related to joint rehabilitation or
Correct.
manual
Correct.
therapy.
Correct.
Or
That's where I got my interest in. Well, I was always interested in orthopedics. I just never
okay,
got a focus like I did.
true,
And even today, I come to India, I go to
mm,
Sancheti Hospital in Pune
true.
every year. Why? Because they are an orthopedic institute.
Yes,
So, I like that part about it. You have to find your niche, and then when you know what you have, you should develop it as much as you can. And I kind of
absolutely.
found my niche. So
True,
that's
true.
how the Hospital for Joint Disease was one of the richest educational experience. They used to have grand rounds every Friday.
Mm,
Everybody was allowed to attend. We had room rounds. You
mm,
saw a lot of. One of my scariest experience was I was walking a patient 3 days after total knee replacement, bilateral, and
okay.
she wanted to go to the bathroom, so I put her on the commode.
Mm,
And at that time, I had no idea what DVT or PE is.
okay,
This is 1989. Not many people knew how much. When people
true.
knew,
Uh,
and my patient bought a PE on the commode,
oh,
and she died.
oh,
So that was scary. Some of these experiences
I'm
are very
sure.
scary. Yeah, but you learn from it. Unfortunately,
Absolutely.
you learn from the severity of DVT and its implication to PE.
Yes,
Now we are like watching like a hawk on every scab.
absolutely.
Every complaint of vascular compromise is not taken
Mm,
lightly. Never is, but
absolutely.
somehow it impresses upon you. So that
Yes.
was that was a great experience. I owe a lot to Hospital for Joint Diseases and NYU for giving me
Mm,
that experience.
mm. Sir, how have you kept yourself updating with respect to the change in the protocols, change in the technology? I read somewhere that you are ahead of the virtual rehabilitation as well. So how important do you think it is for therapists to embrace new technologies, obviously have a healthy critique, but at the same time embrace it and learn something out of it? What's your opinion on that?
My personal opinion is, especially after COVID, it's even more confirmed now, is that any therapist who does not embrace new technology will be a dinosaur
Yes,
in 10 to 15 years.
true.
And there is a significant need for adoption of technology and delivery of healthcare,
Mm-hmm.
which is going to be a different model than it is today. And
Mm,
it keeps on changing rapidly.
mm,
And eventually, if we don't own this field of virtual rehabilitation,
mm.
somebody else will come in and take it away
And
from us.
absolutely.
So we have been very aggressive at our center in terms
Mm,
of virtual. I am personally encouraging this though I don't practice as much as I should because I have other job responsibilities to do now that I didn't have before. But I encourage it very strongly. I have some therapists who do a great job of doing tele rehab. I am more involved right now with technology platforms to make it easier for our therapists. I'm also involved with looking at billing in terms of revenue from it, because I truly believe that if you can't generate revenue for anything you do in life, the technique will not survive. No technique will survive without having revenue attached to it. And you have to be able to give value to the patient for the cost that you charge them. So we have to differentiate between what I call cost and value. Value to the patient is coming at certain cost, and that cost has to be justified with the value you can give them. And that's a very important distinction that we all have to make. It may sound very philosophical, but actually, if you go to the nuts and bolts of everything, like, for example, we have a lot of apps that people like to throw at people all the time. It's a new thing in especially United States. Most patients download it but never use it. There is a significant increase in downloads, but there is no adoption.
Adoption, true.
And adoption requires consistency. Adoption requires simplicity. Adoption requires, simplicity is for me most important.
True.
Because without simplicity, nothing gets done. I truly believe that. That's why I never use any other adjective after my name. I just put PT, that's it. I've never done anything else. I think you are true to be what you do. I'm a PT, and that's what I'm going to put after it. So simplicity matters. So in this also it matters. So I think that there is time has come where if we don't adopt the technological platform, doesn't have to be virtual only. It can be many other forms.
Many other technologies, yes.
Many other things that can be done. I think rehab actually, or physical therapy as a profession, has more avenues using or adopting technology than any other profession, in my opinion. Because we can actually generate revenue by guiding people. 50% of what we do is giving guidance to people. 50% is hands-on. We can't replace the hands-on. You can't apply force through virtual. You can't apply certain things. But the 50% that we educate the patient and then we guide the patient, and 90% of our success depends on what people do at home.
True.
Or all those things that, you go to a surgeon for a total knee replacement, you can't do that virtually. You have to go to the hospital, get it done. But I am looking very carefully at what I call hybrid model of therapy right now in our institution, where we are looking at combination of virtual with in-clinic visits. And luckily for us, especially with COVID, but even before, our state, Maryland state, has done a lot of good things in promoting this type of care, allowing us to bill for the care, which brings in revenue, and that's very important to the health and wealth of the organization. So that's how we have done it. It's a work in progress. I won't say that we have done it. This is a new project that I started doing 2 years ago, and I'm involved with development of apps and stuff like that for this. And eventually, I'm older now than I was, and I wish I was younger than I am today. Because seriously, if I was 20 years younger than I am today, I would feel great because I could actually put more energy
into it. Sure.
Into this than I am today. I have not many years remaining as a clinician, and That bothers me sometimes. And I always tell my wife, I don't know when I will retire. I have no idea. Most of my friends, by the way, my batchmates have started retiring already. Uh,
Okay.
yeah, many of my friends, a lot of my friends have gone to Dubai, Kuwait, Canada. Many of them are retired already.
Mm-hmm.
And uh, some are thinking of retiring. And I can't think of retiring right now. I want to continue. We'll see how long, but it's
Oh,
very
but
exciting. This whole virtual rehab field is very exciting. Uh,
true,
and I'll give
true.
you my experience about this. I don't know if many therapists know this, but in my late 90s,
Mm-hmm.
I worked very fervently on a project that had nothing to do with physiotherapy.
Mm-hmm.
I am more famous for that than anything else in the in the orthopedic community. I don't know if many people know this, but I developed with two of my colleague doctors, Dr. Paley and Herzenberg, a concept called multiplier.
Okay.
A multiplier is a mechanism or a formula that you can apply to predict growth of long bones.
Okay.
So knowing what the multiplier is, you can apply that to the current length to
Mm.
know what the long bone will grow at.
Okay.
Why is it important? Because at that time we were involved with a lot of limb lengthening surgeries.
Mm.
It's
Mm.
important to know how much length you need to lengthen the limb
Mm. Mm.
or shorten the opposite limb
True.
and those formulas. So we gave the world a concept called multiplier. It's published in Journal of Bone and Joint Surgery,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm the second author on that paper, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then we developed an app
Mm-hmm.
that is called Multiplier.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically a polynomial equation of order of six.
Okay.
Human growth plate grows with a polynomial equation order of six,
Mm-hmm.
meaning most boys and girls reach half their length of the femur and tibia by age 3 or 4, between 3 and 4.
Okay.
And at 18, girls at 16, boys at 18,
Mm.
double that growth. So you can imagine your initial 4 years of growth is very rapid and then you slow down.
Absolutely. Mm.
And that's a polynomial equation of order of six. How did I guess it? I didn't know this. I'm not a mathematician or anything.
Mm.
Prevalently worked on Excel. At that time, Excel was the program of choice. So I learned Excel in
Mm.
90 when it was
Mm.
new.
Mm.
Office was new then.
Was
And
new.
Excel
Yes.
allows you to create formulas and we
Mm.
downloaded 300 different databases
Mm-hmm.
of femur and tibia
Mm-hmm.
growth pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And the girls have a distinct multiplier and boys have a distinct multiplier. It's
Okay.
published. And so I'm talking about technology, use of technology, and I have nothing,
Mm.
I don't use it. I personally don't use that app ever, but many
Mm.
parents use it. We did it for femur, tibia, then for height, then for fetus. So in a fetus, if the fetus is diagnosed with a congenital femoral deficiency, you could tell the child, the mother, before the child is born, how much leg length difference that child would have when he's
Mm.
18 years old.
Mm.
Did that. It's on the in that. If you are interested, go download that app. It's free.
Okay.
You can look at it. And
Mm-hmm.
people use it all over the world. And so, what I want to tell you is that technology, how we kind of integrated,
Yes.
and
Yes.
that has made me more friends
Mm.
all over the world in pediatric
Mm.
orthopedics than anything else I did.
Anything else?
I
True.
did so much more in PT world, writing
Mm.
protocols for limb lengthening and all this. But
Mm.
that's one thing that stands in people's mind as an achievement. And it
Mm.
will go down as achievement for me in long run, I think.
Sure. So, in all these roles that you have described, sir, obviously you've been a avid researcher, you've been a clinician, you have been, sort of an academician where you have been, educating people about various things. Which is the most comfortable role for you, and which is the most challenging role for you professionally?
Professionally, clinician is my easy role.
Okay.
It's something that comes to me naturally.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to think. I got trained in various techniques of manual therapy, and soft tissue mobilization techniques. I have my own formula to use them where I want. I personally restrict myself to SI joint and below,
Mm.
and and shoulder to wrist.
Mm.
I don't do spine because I don't feel in my hands I can get the same kind of outcome that I get with peripheral joints that I can with spine. There are other people who are talented than me and they can, but I cannot. So I restrict myself to those peripheral joints. I get much better outcomes in that.
Mm.
But that comes easily to me now. It has always been an easier thing.
Mm.
And I do a lot of casting. I never talked about it, but
Okay.
I do I do about 500 casts a year or sometimes more. And I do dynamic casting, which is all basically splints I make. I
Mm.
truly believe that a restricted range of motion past 1 month of therapy
Mm.
is not tightness, it's a contracture
Mm. Mm.
or a fibrosis.
Mm.
And we wrote a paper on that in JBJ's British about it. There are 20 authors on that paper that shows
Mm.
the same thing. Is that what we have to recognize as therapists that restricted range of motion after 6 weeks after surgery or trauma is not just patient posture or tightness. It cannot be resolved with therapy. So I truly believe in what we call static progressive stretching,
Mhm.
braces. And I
Mm.
truly believe again is that 90% of the work can be done at home if we
Mm.
give a proper brace. So I developed
Mm.
this entire line of customized bracing, which is I have taught some of this to people in India also. We have done couple of courses on this. But I developed a whole line of stretching braces which are inexpensive to make. And I developed one for elbow, one for wrist, one for knee flexion extension, ankle dorsiflexion, all of that.
Mm.
The only thing
Mm.
remaining is hip now. I don't
Okay.
have a solution for hip yet. But so I do a lot of casting. Where did I
Mm.
learn?
Mm.
When I was in Baltimore, first I came, there was this guy named Ricky Garnes. He was our
Mm.
cast technician at our hospital. Brilliant fellow. I learned from him how to put the hinges inside a cast and how to attach different things to the cast to make it more usable to people. And then I developed it on my own.
Mm.
I've done more courses on that in the world than anything else on how to make those casts to make people more functional
Mm.
when they have restricted range of motion in orthopedic, only in musculoskeletal. I do
Mm.
not use it for neuromuscular patients for a different reason. We can discuss that later. For musculoskeletal patients. And that has been the big, I still do it. I can do it in a sleep. I have done more than 10,000. If we do it for 500 to 600 per year, I do all of them mostly. So as a center, we've been doing it for 20 years. So I've done more than 10,000 casts and I continue to do it. So that comes easy to me.
Mm.
Once you create certain protocols that you follow, those comes easy. Research is always unknown.
Mm.
You don't know what you're going to get.
True.
So that's always challenging. Research is always a little challenging. You got to think a little bit harder.
Mm.
You got to get collaboration.
True.
Research cannot be done alone.
Alone.
You need to
Absolutely.
have your therapist involved, your doctors involved. So it requires collaboration. It requires team meetings. It requires a thought process that is aligned
Mm.
uh, together. And sometimes you need to work on funding
Mm.
also.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that takes a little bit more work and it's more challenging.
Mm.
But creating a team uh, is always uh, is always a goal that I have had. I never have done anything alone. I've never taken credit for anything alone ever. I think it's the team approach that we have always used, and it's been very successful. I've been very lucky with working with a lot of great surgeons who are very famous in the world. I've been very lucky that I'm exposed to them. They say the same thing about me. They are lucky that they worked with me. It's great. I'm great to hear that. But I've also had great team members on my therapy staff. My manager today, she's working with me for the last 21 years. I hired her as a student. She's our manager now. So we have a lot of therapists who have stayed with us for a long period of time developing this. One of my best papers, not papers, but chapter is on patellofemoral pain, how to avoid surgery is the topic. It was run by one of my colleagues and me, one of the best contributions. That's used in more grand rounds than anything else.
Okay.
So it's always about collaboration. It's not easy to do. People have personalities, they have their own goals, their
Absolutely.
missions. So to get everybody together has been a very, I worked very hard at it.
True.
It doesn't come easy.
True.
Research, collaboration, team building takes time.
Yes.
And if you set example, you have to set by example.
Mm.
The only thing that motivates your staff is if you set a good example. I tell you why,
True.
because everybody can make the same money everywhere else. So why should they work for you?
Exactly.
So I always tell, now this is a line I borrowed, but professional integrity and character builds destiny.
True.
That's the truth. In the
True.
end, you have to have professional integrity. You have to start from the top all the way down, and you have to have character. That builds destiny. So hopefully, I have tried hard. I have failed many times. I'm not saying that it's always worked. We have failed our research projects. We have a few papers that are never done, never published, works that we have done that worked hard for it. We have some that we have failed miserably.
Mm.
But majority of the times it's the collaboration, the thought process together. And that is a challenge. It's right now in the current environment, it's challenging, very difficult to
Mm.
do. You have to really work hard towards it.
True.
The therapist's mind is now to work 2 years to get a job, new job every year, 2 years, 1 year to make more money. So it's challenging to retain staff. Retention,
Exactly. Retention.
very difficult in every scenario. So you have
True.
to work.
True. 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 That's true, sir. Coming back to India. Now, I'm sure you have seen the growth in the Indian physiotherapy landscape, and as I mean, you have a very unique vantage point where you have seen, as being an Indian, also as an outsider, as to how things have changed over a period of time. The number of therapists who are coming out is quite a lot. The number of colleges that have been there, the quality of students that have come out. So what exactly is your whole take on how do you view this entire transition of Indian physiotherapy scenario right from the time that you were there till today when you see it?
One word, spectacular. Really,
Okay. Okay.
what I see today, the desire.
Mm.
We did a course in Pune last year.
Mm.
Yeah, this year. This year in January, we did a
Mm.
course in Pune.
Mm.
And every year it amazes me how the young therapists are so interested, so motivated,
True.
and so satisfied
Mm.
with their profession. It's spectacular. The credit goes to the professional development done at the schools, back to their job environment.
True.
They do feel frustration in terms of job environment many times. They have voiced it to me many times.
Mm. Mm.
But overall, what at least I move in the circles where I move, but what I have seen, the zeal, the desire, and even the knowledge base is
Mm.
getting better and better every year. So it's great. The teachers and the institutions have to be congratulated on that.
Okay.
Uh, uh, and they are getting it without really, how should I say this? I'm going to choose my words carefully. Uh, they're getting the stuff that we had to work very hard for
Mm.
sometimes. And the structure is getting better.
Mm.
The thought process is getting better. Even the forget about the thought process for colleges.
Mm.
Even like the groups like private practitioners group in
Mm.
Mumbai,
Mm.
It's run by very able people. They bring great courses. I know Saroj Sanghvi very well. She's
Mm.
great. And so even those things are changing. I'm very heartened to see that an Indian cricket team doesn't have a Australian physiotherapist anymore. It's good to
Absolutely.
see that. It's good to see an Indian again there. So, in every, it's great. The challenges are, how do you create the job satisfaction,
Absolutely.
the job, where are there people in the higher hierarchy of the institution?
Mm.
How are they able to protect the younger talent
Mm.
is always going to be a challenge. And that's where I think the focus will
Needs to
be.
be. Mm.
Yeah, needs to be, is that the people who make big decisions of
Mm.
budgets of you know competency or protocols, or how do you make this profession grow, where it becomes a primary care. My goal
Mm.
always was that in my little satellite of thinking, because I'm an orthopedic therapist, is that physiotherapists are the primary care providers of musculoskeletal health.
Mm.
And we have a model like a dental model, where dentist never discharges a patient ever until you die,
Ah,
because you have to keep going to the dentist.
absolutely.
They make you come.
Mm.
And
Mm.
if the therapists were the musculoskeletal dentists,
Mm.
then you would have a model of what we call a ongoing care of health,
Absolutely.
musculoskeletal health. It's so important
Absolutely. Mm.
that we have a muscular. That's what I'm trying now in our institution. We are
Mm-hmm.
really trying hard to create a model. We have a wellness program, we have a running program, we have some
Mm.
very talented therapists. Because if you run and you're active, you're going to have
Mm.
less problems with your health.
Absolutely.
So, so the goal is right now to create a model of like our total knee patients. My total knee
Mm.
patients, I don't discharge them ever. They are
Mm.
my patients forever.
True.
They come back when they need to. There's always a tune up, something.
True.
And I always say this to my friends: your car, your knee joint is just like a car tire. And many times your car needs balancing and alignment of the tires.
Mm. Mm.
Therapy is no different than that.
Absolutely.
Biomechanical assessment, biomechanical treatment for musculoskeletal patient population. That's how I always think. I've done
Mm.
it for the last few years now, more than 10 now, and I'll never change my way. That's why my charts are never discharged.
Okay.
They're always on hold, because I
Absolutely.
truly believe that our patients need that feedback and that care
Ongoing care.
ongoing, especially our elderly more than our young, or
Absolutely.
even
Absolutely.
younger patients need that. They have a lot of questions. So
Absolutely.
I I believe that eventually we will have and I promote this in my courses whenever I go. I don't know how many people really understand the value of it yet,
Mm-hmm.
but in the long run, as the model of healthcare changes
Mm.
and as things are more obvious, I'm telling you, this COVID pandemic has changed
Mm.
our world forever.
Yes,
It
it
will
has.
never be same.
It'll never be the same.
It will never be the same.
Yes.
I can tell you that right now. 50% of the people will never go back to work on their desk.
Yes, that's true.
Commercial real estate will be empty.
Absolutely.
So there are things that will happen that will never change. Maybe we'll come back to some normalcy in 1 year, 2 year, depending on where things
Mm.
go. But we have to adapt for that. And that's a very important message that I want to give people, is that, we have to change with the times, and technology is something that enables you to do that. How you use it, you can create an app for Angry Bird,
Absolutely.
or you can create an app for multiplier or wellness or
Absolutely.
yoga or
True.
something that changes your health and maybe
True.
wealth.
True.
So it all depends on how you use it. So But I'm impressed by overall growth in India in terms of there are a lot of people who are doing great work. When I don't, I don't want to single out somebody, then I'm not partial to somebody else. So
Mm,
a lot of people in India who are doing great work. I'm impressed. I went to Bangalore to visit
mm,
Ramaya College. I was impressed, thoroughly impressed what they do
mm,
there. And every time I interact with faculty, students, amazing.
mm,
So I've not been to every institution, so I can't comment like that. But when I go to SIP meetings, I go every
mm,
year.
mm,
I'm very impressed. So it's a great thing. And it will be challenging for people in in your position now, like you are, or others, to create that pathway for them to
mm.
succeed. And that's very difficult. It took
I agree.
APTA almost 25 years to do it.
I agree.
The whole concept. But I was talking to a therapist in Pune,
Mm,
and they had opened a spine clinic, just take care of spine.
mm.
And he said, "Sir, all our patients are direct referrals. Nobody sends us patients.
Yes.
We just pay our board and come."
Yes.
So the patient education got
Has
better.
gone. Absolutely.
And I think that is a very important piece that I miss today, that I haven't done enough good job of it. Is I got so focused in clinical and everything else. Me as a person has not done enough patient education. And I would like to, I'm trying to change it now, but that's a regret that we have to get our patient along with us. And that's something that we will have to do in future.
Absolutely. So, any last comments on any message to our young therapists? Anything else apart from, I mean, you have said quite a few things about the roles, the technology, and how you're going to be extinct if you don't embrace the technology, etc. But anything else that comes to your mind?
Don't be afraid of failure.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Every failure I have, I tried. Not that every time I was, let me tell you, at age 63, you can look back and say, I was not afraid. I was not scared of failures. Of course, I was. At that moment in time, I
Mm,
was scared. I was afraid. I wanted to give up. When I heard that doctor say that he doesn't talk to therapists in New York, I was seriously considering doing a computer engineering course. At that time, computers were a big deal. I could have been today sitting in front of a desktop computer, programming or coding. Would have happened. So don't be afraid of failures. That's one thing that I'll tell you. And I tell you something, professional integrity and character is what will carry everybody forward. That's the
that's
only way. Only don't forever forget that. That's your destiny, professional integrity and character. That's my message for everybody. And I don't want to be, I don't want to pontificate on anything. I've had my share of failures, but you learn from every failure, and you try to build on it and try to develop it. And that's how my successes are all based on my failures.
absolutely. Those are absolutely thoughtful words, and something that everybody needs to reflect upon and understand that what failure actually means and how you move ahead in life. So it was lovely talking to you, sir. It was lovely knowing your journey as a therapist, and we got a glimpse into your struggles, your achievements, your highs, your lows. So it was really, really nice talking to you. Very inspiring, sir. Thank you very much for
Well,
taking out the time.
thank you SIP, and thank you personally for giving me this opportunity to share my journey with you.
It was our pleasure, sir.
And I hope it inspires some young minds. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you.